Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept our humble obeisances. All glory Srila Prabhupada and all glories to assembled devotees. Welcome everyone for Guru Maharaj's session. So last time Guru Maharaj actually explained that from Srimad Bhagavatam that the qualities of the spiritual master, qualities of the disciple to be able to serve the spiritual master, and we'll be moving on from that verse. I'll just quickly share my screen. Yeah.
Satyabhama?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
We're starting a whole new series on Ram Navami starting today.
Okay, Guru Maharaj. Then should I stop sharing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Give me a minute. I've been on the media for the last 2 hours straight. And I just need a drink of a glass of water here so to keep going.
That's fine, Guru Maharaj. Okay.
Hello.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Om Gyantimidandasya Jana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyatya Desatarine. Panchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Paevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Ram Jai Ram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Lakshman Hanuman, Jai Sitaram, Jai Lakshman Hanuman. So we are in the early few days before the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Ramachandra. So for the next week, we will try to speak about pastimes, qualities, characteristics, and mostly we're going to focus on pastimes within the Ramayana that give a very relevant message to each of us in our day-to-day life that we can understand and apply, which will help us to move forward in developing relationships and in practicing Krishna consciousness. So the Ramayana is full of that. Sometimes we say, sometimes it is said that if you want to live life and you want to know the formula how to live life, read and study Mahabharata. If you want to lead, if you are a leader in any field of activity, spiritual or even within the secular realm, study the life of Sri Ramchandra. There are many powerful, potent, and direct messages that can be gleaned from his pastimes and his characters also. And then, of course, if you want to develop love, and especially love for Krishna, then Srimad Bhagavatam is the scripture. But to say exclusively each one of these has a particular one would be incorrect. Each one deals with all three subject matters. So the Ramayana is both about leading life and also about how to live life very much. So there's one particular pastime that I want to discuss today, which I think has a very powerful message that we can all basically learn from. I pray to the assembly of devotees and to Srila Prabhupada that I can do justice to this particular Leela within the great Leela of Ram's pastimes. And there is a heading to this particular pastime. It's called Judging Without Understanding. That is the actual title, Judging Without Understanding. And then the subtitle is A Recipe for Ruining Relationships. Judging Without Understanding, a recipe for ruining relationships. One of the most potent, powerful subplots in the Ramayana is the confrontation between two brothers known as Vali and Sugriva. In the Mahabharata, fraternal animosity between the Pandavas was there, which caused the demise of the Kauravas, who received fratricidal war. There also in the Mahabharata, where two families, two sections of the same family became, avowed enemies, and a huge battle ensued where millions and millions of soldiers were killed. In this Ramayana pastime, it's interesting because the connection between these two brothers, Vali and Sugriva, they were both sons of Riksaraj, are very powerful. And they belong to the Varna race, a race of celestial monkeys who possesses tremendous strength and intelligence and have both attributes of the simian and sapient uh, forms of life. So they are both human and at the same time animal. So we have an interesting combination, but there are many of them were sons of very powerful demigods. And Vali was the son of Indra, and Sugriva was the son of, um, Surya. Although they were brothers, still they had this ray of difference coming from their geological. In other words, their heavenly fathers, their earthly father was Riksharaj, and their heavenly fathers were these two powerful personalities. And their love between each other, their friendship, their association with each other was strong, regular, very deep. They were inseparable. Now, as the Leela unfolds, we find that, of course, if you understand a little bit more, you'll understand that the geographical designations of the different features of personalities were quite distinct. In the northern section of Ayodhya, there were many, many devas. And in the southern section, there were many, many demons. So that dichotomy or that demarcation was quite clear. The demons from the south, the devas from the north. And so these two monkeys were mostly in the southern part, the Varna race. So there was harassment from demons. So one demon called Malavi, actually his name was Mayavi, he came to Kiskinda forest where the monkeys were located, and he challenged Vali to a fight. Vali is very powerful. Vali immediately sprang up from his throne and followed came at this demon. And Sugriva wanted to support his brother, not just in case there were any other demons around who would be there to attack Vali. So Sugriva came as an assistant, not to fight with the demon, but just to be ready if there were more demons. When he saw these two brothers, this demon, Mayavi, he became very fearful and decided not to fight and decided to run away. But Vali pursued the demon, and this demon entered into this area, which was a dark, carnivorous hole in the ground, and it was full of catacombs. And so he disappeared into there. Vali said to Sugriva, "You stay here and guard. I'm going in." So Vali went in, and first, before that happened, Sugriva said, "Actually, it's quite dangerous in there. You never know. There might be a whole horde of demons waiting in there. And so don't go." Vali refused to listen to the instructions, and he went in. And so there was quiet for a long time, and actually went on for at least 2 days. On the third day, Sugriva was thinking, "What is this? We're not hearing anything." And then he heard a loud screech that when he heard that, it was deafening. And then After that, there was silence. And then Sugriva, heart, he sunk, thinking maybe my brother has been killed. So he didn't know what to do. Should he go into the cave and see what is the situation? But that was dangerous. So he concluded that his brother was killed, and now he wanted to trap that demon inside of the cage, in the cave. So he took what he saw. He saw this gigantic boulder, and he pushed the boulder. It was very strong. He was very struggling and straining to move that boulder, and he put it very nicely over the hole of the cave, and it sealed completely. And then he left, and he went back to the kingdom, and it's described that with a heavy heart, he described that Bali is no more, and he broke the news. Everybody was in distress. It was a mourning period, and people came, and now Sugriva was afflicted and resolved to carry on his brother's legacy when he was asked, "You take the throne." And it was obvious that he should be the next monarch of the Vanaras. And so he accepted it because it seemed like there was no other choice. And then he started to rule. After a few days later, Bali, when he decided he was actually not killed, it was the demon that was actually killed. Now Bali is trying to get out. And he comes and he's tired from fighting with this demon. And he comes to the opening of the cave, but there's no opening. All he could see is this big boulder in front of him. And being very tired, it became so difficult to move this boulder. But he somehow waxed some energy, and he was able to move the boulder. And then he concluded, what is this? What is my brother doing? So then he went back to the kingdom, and he saw, and as soon as he came, Sugriva was so happy. There's Vali. And he wanted to come up and greet his brother, but Vali was so angry. His eyes were bloodshot. He just ran and he started beating his brother. And so, Sugriva didn't know what to do. And seeing Sugriva on the throne, Vali concluded that Sugriva was trying to explain what happened, that he thought he was dead and he didn't really want to take. But Vali was so absorbed in his own wrong estimation of his brother that he just kept beating him. And Sugriva was no match for Bali, and he didn't want to fight with his brother anyway. So he decided to flee. And where did he go? There was only one place he could go. Bali was chasing him. And so he ran to the hermitage of Matanga, the sage Matanga Muni. Now, many years ago, Bali killed this one demon called Dundubi. And he flung the carcass of that demon a long ways, and it landed right in Matanga Muni's ashram during the time he was performing a sacrifice, and it desecrated the entire sacrifice. And so the sage was so angry that he cursed that if this Bali comes within 4 miles of my ashram, he will die. So Sugriva knew that, so he knew this is the only place he could free himself from the wrath of Bali, so he ran this. Now, this is called error and attribution, or they call it an attribution error. The psychologists give you another thing is that when you're in a situation and someone has done something, you somehow or other, based on what you know and what you can observe at the same time, you make a conclusion or you make a evaluation. And then you can understand. But this didn't happen. Vali committed that offense where he didn't want to listen to his brother. Sugriva wanted to speak, but Vali didn't give him a chance. So all he could do was run away and hope that at another time he could speak. Now Sugriva was away. Vali took the throne. He's angry at Sugriva for what he thought was taking the kingdom and hoping that he would die in that cave. So now Vali wants revenge. So what does he do? He takes the wife of Sugriva, whose name was Ramna, and he makes her his second wife like that. So Vali succumbed to a common error, which psychologists call attribution error. When we see others behave in an inappropriate way, we tend to attribute that behavior to their internal character, not the external extenuating circumstances. You see the point? The external circumstances may be the cause of why they're acting that way, but we judge it's their character. That is called attribution error, like that. For example, when we see someone overeating, we think, oh, that person's just a glutton. But when we overeat, we think, wow, I was really hungry at that time. And I just happen to eat more than I usually do. So this is called attribution error. And it ruins relationships. And that's exactly what happened. Like that. So now, every time Sugriva left the Matanga Muni's ashram, Vali would be notified and he would hunt him down, and then Sugriva would have to run. Sometimes he would catch him and he would start beating him, and then Sugriva would somehow get away and make it to, and because Vali knew that if he went too close to Matanga Muni's ashram, he would die. The curse, he knew about the curse. So fast forward a few years, and then Lord Ram enters the scene. He meets Hanuman. Hanuman introduces him to Sugriva, and Sugriva wants, Ram wants the help of Sugriva. And Sugriva also sees that Ram can help him in his situation also. Ram said, we need the help of the monkey soldiers. You are because he recognized Sugriva as the leader of the monkeys. And he said, we want your armies because my wife has been stolen. And therefore, Sita Dev, and I want to get her back. Now it's interesting because Sugriva, his wife was also stolen by his brother. So they had something in common like that. And what Vali did was very grievous offense. To take the wife of one's younger brother is a very grievous sin. It's almost like incest. It warrants great punishment, and it's due to unwarranted aggression. So Ram explained, and Sugriva said, well, this is my situation. My brother is, has taken my wife, He's angry at me. I can't go near the kingdom anymore. This is the situation. So Ram decided that Sugriva said, I will help you, but first you have to help me. So Ram agreed. So, and then, so what to do? And so Ram said to Sugriva, you challenge him in a fight, and while you're fighting, I will take my arrow and finish him. Because obviously, any fight between the two, Bali would win. He was much more powerful. Bali also had something. He had a necklace that was given to him by his heavenly father, Indradev, that if he was fighting with someone, he would get half of their strength due to the power of that necklace. And so there was no chance in any way that anyone could challenge Bali, because as soon as they would challenge Bali, they would lose half of their strength, and Bali would get that strength. So now Sugriva comes out and he challenges Bali to a fight. Bali is with his wife, Tara. He has two wives, Rumna and Tara. Tara is the mother of Angada, the son of Bali. So he leaves his wife after being challenged by his brother. He comes out and now he's ready to fight. And so he immediately runs, and there's a great fight. And Sugriva is fighting as hard as he can, but he's losing ground, and he's waiting for Ram to come through. But Ram, nothing happens. So finally Sugriva realizes, I'm going to die. So he somehow or other gets away from Bali and runs back to Matanga Ashram and gets away. Later on, he meets Ram and said, what happened? What you promised you were going to help me. He said, well, I wanted to, but I couldn't tell the difference between the two brothers, so I didn't want to shoot you with the arrow. So I couldn't, I refrained from doing anything. There was nothing I can do. And then he said, but challenge him again. And when you challenge him again, you put a red bandana around your head so I know the difference between you and Bali. So now the question comes, the people question Ram's character in a couple of his pastimes. One was banishing his wife to the forest after they were back in Ayodhya and sending her to Valmiki's ashram. And in this particular thing, how he hid behind a tree, and then the fight is going on again. And now, before the fight, again, Sugriva comes and he challenges Vali. This time he's wearing a red bandana, so Ram can make a distinction. Now, Vali immediately gets up, ready to fight with his brother again. And then his wife, Tara, says, my dear husband, he's coming back. Don't go. This is not the time to go. Why would he come back? He knows he cannot defeat you. He must have some help. And my feeling is you're going to die. So don't go. Tara gives good advice, but Bali can't hear it. His anger over is so strong that it overshadows his intelligence to understand what his good wife was advising, but he immediately leaves. And then and they're fighting again. And again, Sugriva's losing ground. And finally, Ram takes an arrow and he hides behind a shal tree. And he shoots that arrow and it hits the chest of Bali and knocks him down. And then Bali, because he had that necklace, he didn't die immediately. Ram walks over to him and he's looking at Ram in a very humble way. He realizes who Ram is, and therefore he's feeling somewhat satisfied. Now his life is ebbing away. And then I'll read something. It says here. Let's see. The analysis of this reasoning could be an article for the it's to suffice that Folly found the reasoning convincing. Why did Ram do that? Ram gave various reasons why he did that when Vali was lying in on the ground mortally wounded. He said, because you are a sinful aggressor, you must be killed. You have committed multiple aggressions against your brother who have had no enmity or bad intentions towards you. You attacked him with murderous intentions. You stripped him of all his wealth, and you took his wife. For an older brother to seize the wife of a younger brother is an unwarranted aggression, and it deserves capital punishment. Now, after telling this to Vali, when Vali is wondering why the Lord killed him, or he's about to die, then the Lord says to Vali, if you think I'm wrong and you want me to restore your life, I will. I will restore your life. I will withdraw the arrow, restore your life and strength right now. Vali replied that despite his many misdeeds, he had been causally blessed to get the priceless opportunity to die in the auspicious presence of Lord Ram. An opportunity that he didn't want to pass over just for a longer life. He further confessed that for long he had felt that he might have wronged Sugriva, but because of his pride, it didn't allow him to consider these feelings. With his last breath, while he solaced his sobbing wife Tara and his grieving son Angada, then he asked them to hold no grudges against Sugriva. Then he turned to Sugriva and told him, take care of my wife Tara and Angada, because this will be my dying wish. Seeking forgiveness for what he had done to his brother, Vali took out the necklace that Indra had given him. And as soon as that necklace came off his body, then immediately his life ebbed. For his life was no longer there. He gave that necklace to Sugriva, and then he died. And of course, this goes on that the story of Sugriva and Vali defies simplistic understanding of good versus evil. Both brothers were virtuous. A misjudgment by the more powerful one caused a whole turmoil in the relationship. Thankfully, their unhappiness was reduced by the presence of Ram, and Ram saved the day. If we have, we'll speak a little bit now in general, if we have judged others without understanding, we can do the same thing as Vali did. And these things, as is mentioned, there are three A's for reconciliation. One, it's called acknowledge. Two is called apology. And three is called amend. For those of our relationships, those in our relationships that gone sour, we can honestly introspect and humbly hear from others to check if we might have been more at error in our understanding than we have believed so. If we come to know of our own error, we can acknowledge that error. That's the beginning. Just as the arrogant words of judgment can hurt, humble words of reproachment can heal. One can take steps to build relationships by apologizing, just like Vali did at the end for what he had done. And then at the end, just as Vali gave his necklace to Sugriva, and then one can also make amends by offering some service like that. So here, we have an amazing pastime, and we can see what is the recipe for ruining relationships, judging without understanding. And this is the element in this particular pastime. Is Vali didn't give a chance for Sugriva to explain. He had concluded. He knew the situation clearly. He didn't want to hear of any explanations. He made his own judgment, and obviously it was wrong. Therefore, a very close and loving relationship turned to be something that was quite unfavorable, to the point that it caused the death of one and the unhappiness of the other, like that. And sometimes people say, well, Ram acted unfairly. He should have faced Vali face to face. But then again, people would say that, Vali had that necklace, but actually it wouldn't have affected the personality of God, and no one can take the energy from the Supreme Lord. But Ram made the point that because you had taken the wife of another, which is a great sin, and of course Ram was experiencing that himself, he saw that there was no other way in this situation. And sometimes it's mentioned that because Vali was, he was a monkey in one sense. So sometimes when you hunt animals, you hide and you kill them from a secret place. So these are some of the reasons why Ram acted the way he did. And there are other reasons also. We can also go into some of them. The other one is, just like we use the example, if someone is a criminal, you can't fight a criminal in a fair way, just like the police may chase a criminal. And the criminals may be trying to get away, so the police might not say stop and have a fair fight. They will kill the criminal in any situation. These are some of the reasons why Ram did it in the way he did it. But he gave him a chance. He said, if you want, I can remove the arrows. But Bali was so devoted that he said, no, a longer life is not worth giving up the fact that I've been killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means my destination is glorious. He felt grateful that he could go back to the spiritual world. The Lord delivers sometimes by killing and sometimes by his sweet mercy. But in any case, the Lord is, we call it, he is equal. In the beginning of the 7th canto, the first chapter is entitled, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead is equal to everyone," because he loves every living entity perfectly and completely, and he doesn't discriminate between one and another, but he relates to each other and reciprocates and offers his mercy according to how that person deserves it. So he gave him supreme mercy by killing him. He stopped his aggression towards Sugriva, saved Sugriva, and at the same time, he killed Bali and gave him a chance to enter into the spiritual world. And then it says that the Lord shot an arrow to destroy 7 trees. And these trees actually were sal trees, and the arrow that he shot went through these trees, went into Patala Loka, killed a whole group of demons there, and then came back and landed in his quiver. And yeah, as I mentioned, it not only it killed these 7 trees, but it also killed all of these demons. Therefore, from the certain point of view, sometimes the Lord delivers by killing, and sometimes he gives protection by maiming. But in any case, he is all good, and his judgment is always perfect. So this is a little bit about this pastime between the misunderstanding, judging without understanding between Bali and Sugriva.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. This is first time, honestly speaking, I've heard this pastime in so much depth. And it's so nice to hear, because in my childhood, we have always heard Bali and Sugriv, but never knew the relationship between them. So it was very nice to hear. And judging without understanding, it was so nice concept. Thank you. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. And devotees, if you have any questions, comments, realizations, please unmute yourself and ask. And it would be nice to take your darshan. If you can please keep your cameras on during the discussion. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, Radha Bhakti Mataji, you can go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for such a nice class. I also haven't heard that pastime in that way before, so thank you. Guru Maharaj, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little on acknowledge, apologize, amend. What constitutes proper acknowledgement or a proper apology or proper amend?
Well, the acknowledgement is the first part. Once that is established, then the other two become, and they just follow automatically. The first acknowledgement is the relationship. When we're talking about relationships in this situation, something is wrong with the relationships. So then we have to introspect and see, well, what is wrong? We have to be a little bit humble to be somewhat reflective in a broader way and not simply blame the other person for whatever appears to be going wrong. We have to see it from our perspective. What is about me in this relationship that I can change, that will give me the understanding of what is actually caused the situation to go wrong. In other words, reflecting on trying to understand, putting the blame on yourself, or at least putting the responsibility on yourself to understand from your own point of view. As long as we keep looking outward towards the other party, we'll never get a clear understanding, nor can we actually proceed to follow the other two. So acknowledgement is first. And we have here, Bali acknowledged. And he also had this feeling, it's mentioned, that maybe he was wrong, but his pride didn't allow him. So this pride, this false pride, is a very subtle feature of the ego, which causes one to think that, I'm not wrong. I've understood everything clearly. And when some doubts came up, they're dismissed because these doubts actually have no meaning, because I know that what I've observed it, I've understood it, I've been in the midst of it. This is the right conclusion. But you can't go anywhere with that mindset. Therefore, you have to acknowledge that, hey, something went wrong, some introspection, some humility, self-evaluation, seeing yourself in the situation and how you're acting. Once you acknowledge that you are wrong, or at least you are responsible for why the relationship has gone sour, then the second thing you could do, even if the other person is at fault, you can take the position of being at fault, because as they say, everyone has their own vision. And therefore, when two visions clash, then you have that, you have dissension, you have conflict, you have argument. So the second thing is to apologize. That's the second thing. By trying to build a relationship. Therefore, that's the next thing, is to apologize. And that doesn't require much explanation. The acknowledgement part is the fundamental basis of everything else. Once we acknowledge that, okay, maybe I was wrong, or maybe I contributed to the whole thing that went wrong, so let me apologize. And that opens up, a broader understanding. And then once we apologize, then we think that, okay, now I've done that. Now let me do the next thing, and that is to offer some service, to offer something personal in exchange to bring the relationship back to to its favorable position. So yeah, for Bali to come to that stage of acknowledgement, it took him on the verge of death. We don't want to get to that point. When we want to acknowledge it before it becomes a crisis in our life. So a little humility, a little reflection, a little reevaluation of the situation. And we may also, and this is something I'm just adding, we may also bring in a third party who maybe has some understanding of the situation to get their opinion of what is the situation and how I can, change, like how I can ameliorate the whole situation and bring it back to a favorable relationship. So do we need an extreme jolt to do that, or can we do it before that jolt actually comes?
Thank you, Garmaraj.
You want to make some comments based on what I said?
No, thank you. I like the emphasis of going inwards, because I think people can acknowledge, apologize, and try to make amends in ways that maybe fall a little short or a little shallow, myself included. Sometimes people say, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And that's not satisfying to the heart because it's not taking ownership and responsibility. So I think there's so much. I know Sukhabha Prabhu writes about, extensively just about how to apologize. It's like, it's an art. Sridevi Prabhu, you probably have studied this as well. So I think your emphasis on, looking inside is the best advice.
Yeah, you get so much understanding of the situation when you do that. And you also get the understanding of your attitude towards the situation. And you can also see how you can change that attitude to make the situation favorable. Yeah. Yeah, it takes humility. That humility has to be. If that humility doesn't appear, then nothing will change.
Thank you, Gurmaharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Sridevi Mataji can go ahead.
Thank you, Satyabhama. Please accept my humble obeisances, dear Guru Maharaj. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to your lotus feet. Thank you for this very detailed recounting of this pastime. As you spoke, I realized that I have some serious apologizing to do. I realized that I have made some judgments, errors of judgments, and I have, introduced some sourness in the relationship because of my viewpoint, which I've been holding on to as dear. And I realized that it's actually pride and false ego and some triggers. So it's very illuminating to hear from you that how our warped thinking can ruin some things. And I'm realizing there's work for me to do. So thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Thank you for telling us that, it's not just a story in the scriptures, it's happening every day. Sumitra, wow. Hare Krishna.
You're on mute, Mataji. Please unmute yourself.
I'm not sure that my question goes directly to you because you are a sannyasi, but when you mentioned that Tara suggested her husband not to go because something's going to be wrong, we realized there, and it's not the only time that wife advises something to her husband and he doesn't listen and everything goes wrong. So what's that in mankind like, or how that we can represent that they start listening? Because we know also
well, you know better than you know better than I do. You have experience.
Yeah, but it's not very, I mean, it's often, when I speak with some Grihastha devotees, there is few of them. And also to my husband, that astrologers said, you just, like in your stars is, if you follow your wife, everything's going to be okay. And we constantly have, disagreement, or it's not very easy. I mean, we forget for that. We don't, and we know that I heard once, not only once, that if wife is not happy, Lakshmi leaves that house. So how is that so problem with very problem?
As a sannyasi, I mean, I tell my disciples what to do, and they don't listen. So maybe I could probably get some counseling from you.
No. I called my husband today because he's on course. He's in Zadar, and I suggested him what to do, and he said just like, I think you can do this, and it's not that.
Well, let me see if I can come up. Let me see if I can give you some kind of answer. Well, I know psychology of a man in the relationship with a wife. This I know from both from women, from psychologists, and from men. When a wife tells the husband what to do, he immediately does the opposite. Why? Because it's just the male ego. And now when a wife will persist and the husband starts to agree, the husband loses his masculinity. He becomes a wimp if he listens to his wife. So therefore, the men generally don't listen. And I know one very senior lady, she told me, I used to tell my husband what to do, and he would tell me, what you're saying is right, but because you're telling me I can't do it. That's the male ego. And the reason why he can't do it, because if he becomes subordinate to his wife, the whole relationship goes to hell. He becomes controlled by his wife. They call that henpecked husband. They call him, he's a nerd, he's a wimp, he doesn't have any backbone. He's just we use other terminologies that I can't say in public because they're not allowed to say it, but I'm thinking of other statements. So, yeah. So therefore, a wife, and here's the answer to your question, you have to tell him what to do in such a way that he comes to the conclusion that he has come up with the idea of what you want him to do without telling him.
I know that's the main recipe, but sometimes it's hard, because you're in rush, and like Tara said, don't go, there is some problem here, something's gonna happen, and it's really hard, not to always not, because we are also, I sometimes want to get okay, you suggested that and that's okay. No, I have always be like, I'm giving advice like it's not an advice, or that is his idea. That's really big difference for a female.
You have to study your husband in such a way as that you learn that art. By not telling him, you're telling him. Yeah. And then he comes to the same conclusion.
Nobody's teaching us that, like when we are, it's not, and it's really one of the stuff that a little girl needs to know in the future. That's kind of.
I can tell you there is a little bit of there is a little kind of elixir or medicine or some potent formula. It's called affection. If you use affection, it might have much more of an effect. Yeah. Yeah. Don't say you're too old for that, because you're not.
No, if there's no questions from this subject anymore, I would like to ask something that you mentioned a few days earlier. So I will just leave now. And it's also between husband and wife. But
Well,
you mentioned something.
Well, you're doing the same thing you're accusing your husband doing. You're not listening to me.
No, I'm just leaving. Like, okay, you will see. I'm not saying anything. I leave time to say. So I'm not like gossiping or something.
Well, the formula is you have to work in such a way as that he comes to the conclusion of what you want him to do. That's all.
Yeah. And that it's his idea.
Yeah, and then he'll do it. And that can be done if you study your husband. Well, obviously you know your husband. You get to know the person you're living with. You've been together for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, after that point, you start to know. You can't go around and just start beating him on the head and say, this is what I want, you know. It's not going to work.
Yeah, but for myself, it's not like our relationship, but we can see from history and studying other stuff that it's always like that. The female gives a good advice, and this muscular male ego is like, no, I will do it like this, and then everything goes wrong. So just like, okay, so what's the problem? Can you just...
The problem is the female doesn't know the art of telling the husband without telling him. You have to learn that art. You have to learn that art. And if you want to, there are books about how to do that. You can also read on it.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I look forward to my next chance to come to your house and eat pizza.
We are hoping and praying for that day to happen.
It'll happen soon. And thank you, Sumitra. Thank you for your question. You really hit on a very important point, because it's really, it can break a relationship or it can strengthen the relationship. It's a very important point you made. The women have to learn that art, because the male ego will not change.
Thank you, Sumitra Mataji. Yes, Vrindavan Nath Prabhu, you can go.
Thanks, Mataji. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So Guru Maharaj, thank you very much for this beautiful pastimes. And I see two characters here. One, Sugriva, who actually had association of Lord's devotee Hanuman and also Lord's himself. And other side, Bali, who was like having false ego, pride, lust, anger, everything. And is this because Guru Maharaj, because he was not having direct association of devotee, Lord's devotee or Lord's?
It doesn't say that anywhere. It doesn't say that anywhere. It's just that these things can happen even to very nice people. And it happens to people who are close. Something, as again, I gave you the point that we blame it on the internal character rather than the external circumstance. It was the external circumstance. There was nothing wrong in Sugriva's character. Bali judged the character, or he misjudged the character, rather than seeing, well, this is just a circumstance. And so that you have to be able to, and I use the example, when you see someone overeating, you might think, oh, he's just a glutton, eats too much. But then when you overeat, you just think, well, I was extra hungry today, that's all. So when someone else does it, it's their character. When you do it, it's the circumstance. That's the way we mistakenly think. And that's what Bali did. He saw it as his character, but it wasn't. It was just a circumstance that appeared. A nice person may get angry. A person who is very humble and very tolerant, very much fixed in devotional service, they may experience an element of anger due to a circumstance. And then people who may observe that will see it as their character. But in some cases it is the character, in some cases it's not. But in this case, it wasn't. And in most cases, we have to see, did the circumstance warrant the action? Or was it something more than that? Or was it the character? In this case, it was the circumstance. And Bali should have known that because his brother was so loyal, so dedicated, so friendly. They were so close together. Why this little circumstance, then he judged that, well, all this time, Sugriva is waiting for me to die so he can take the throne. That was his conclusion, but was completely wrong. The point is, he didn't give Sugriva a chance to explain. He already concluded without hearing the explanation. Sometimes we don't even ask for an explanation. We just make our conclusion. He could have at least said, well, what's going on? But he didn't. And that's mentioned as one of the, because he was so sure he was right.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you. That helps. Hare Krishna.
Sri Devi, before you have a question, Sri Devi? Oh, okay. The hand is still up there on the screen.
I have a comment, Guru Maharaj, if I may.
Yeah, just give me one
Humorous
minute.
one.
Just give me 1 minute. Someone's coming to the door and I have to unlock the door. I'll be back in a second.
Satya Mataji, sorry, just my hands, I'm not able to lower it, my hand. I don't know why, but please don't. So, some problem technically, sorry. Yeah, I think it's gone. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
On the subject of man listening to wife, not listening to wife, I remember at one point, complaining to my counselor when I was in marriage, and she was saying, yes, the husband is the head of the household and the wife is the neck. The neck can turn the head. So you must learn that art. So I remember her saying that. I just wanted to put that out there, that the husband is the head of the household and the wife is the neck. She can turn the head. If she knows that.
I have to remember that once. It's a good one.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Then the second comment I wanted to make was about even Mother Sita. When Lakshman did not stir, Maricha was calling out Ram, Ram when he was dying. And she just jumped to the conclusion, yes, you've always been wanting this to happen because you want to enjoy me, this thing, that thing, that thing. She went on and on and on, completely forgetting that Lakshman was so chaste, he never looked above her ankles. She completely forgot how faithfully he was standing guard all night without sleeping, guarding both of them from all the demons and wild animals. I mean, she forgot everything that he had done so far and simply attributed everything to just one ill motive based on his reluctance to leave on her order to go rescue Ram. So I was thinking that's another error of attribution.
Yeah. That's a very prominent one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because of her misunderstanding of what was going on. Rashad? Good. Come in. Okay, so interesting dynamics. And tomorrow we'll go into more of this with another particular extract from one of the pastimes in the Ramayana. And we'll continue to do this for the next few days. So thank you very much. I don't see any more questions, so I guess we'll conclude here, Satyabhama.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, we can conclude here. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ji ki jai.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you.
Hari Hari.
Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.